My previous videos on the plan to enslave humanity parts 1 and 2 were deleted by YouTube, so I have pulled key points of those messages and edited them, hoping that YouTube will let them stay long enough for a mini refresh of the subjects presented in this video. Hopefully we can connect the dots.
So given the mathematics, you can't physically control your target population. It's not enough. Yes, you can do it through people in uniform, which is manipulating the target population to police the target population, but you can't do it en masse.
Pieces of the plan involve many factors to bring the world population into manageable overall control. These pieces are based on a demonic roadmap comparative to God's word or to Antichrist use of the word found in Isaiah 28 verse 10 and verse 13.
For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little.
But the word of the Lord was unto them, precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little, that they might go and fall backward, and be broken and snared and taken.
It's about moving populations into city centers, concentrated city centers, and clearing them out of the rural areas. And about 75% of the population lives in large cities. The goal is to move everyone out of the rural areas and into the large cities. And the goal of Agenda 21 is one world government and total control from the central unit.
With so many avenues that lead to the fullness of the subject concerning the plan to enslave humanity, I needed to detach from my editing for prayer. There are events that are in progress around the world concerning the movement of the world's population in order to bring about the management of them. These events, although seen as natural events, they are not. We must come to the understanding that people in high places, whether openly or in secret, are behind these events. And yet even they have been enslaved through the love of money, power, and what they believe is their destiny. And in these things, the princes of the darkness of this world, and spiritual wickedness, which are in the high places are their masters.
And then you look at that, people laugh at the fact that this world can be manipulated by a non-human force.
For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places.
Population control and depopulation go hand in hand. Depopulation is a target that allows the elite few to be able to control the mass. The future will include the advancement of technology in artificial intelligence or AI, surveillance cameras, G5 antenna, radio frequency identification or RFID chips, and most business by the majority of the people is done through electronic means. We are able to see the effects of this overall control in China. It is like a roadmap to what lies ahead in the near future.
You know, you come out of the womb and immediately you're influenced by your parents in terms of your perceptions. And they're not being malevolent, most of the time anyway, the vast majority, but they've been through the system you're about to go through, the process you're about to go through. They've bought it, accepted it as normal, accepted the crazy place to be sane, and therefore out of wanting to do right for you, they'll pass those perceptions on to you. Take a deep breath, take a step back, look at it again. When you think about it, you come out of the womb, and within 4 years, you've only just got here. You're sitting at a desk with an authority figure representing the state's version of everything in front of you, telling you when you have to be there, when you can leave, when you can speak, when you can go to the toilet, when you can eat, what is, what isn't, what's possible, what's not possible, and the nature of everything. This plan has been around a long time. They have manipulated human perception by manipulating the information people receive.
The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. George Orwell. Those who control the present control the past, and those who control the past control the future. George Orwell, 1984. History is a set of lies agreed upon. Napoleon Bonaparte.
Look around. It's not been planned for 5 years or 10 years. It's been planned for a long time.
History. Control of information and perception has more than just current control. History is the first major issue I want to focus on. I will start with the invention of the printing press and the relatively unrestricted circulation of information, and revolutionary ideas transcended borders, captured the masses in the Reformation, and threatened the power of political and religious authorities. Why the threat? The increase in literacy broke the monopoly of the literate elite on education and learning and bolstered the emerging middle class. It also ripped absolute control of the contents of religious texts from the hands of the church. No longer would it be possible to centrally control and censor what was written on topics of the Christian and other faiths. Church officials, before the printing press was invented, were the only ones to read the Bible, and they then taught their interpretations to the congregation. The loss of control over the masses by the church and other religions was not the only issue. The fact that the population not being the subject, or slaves, to those who ruled was the major one. The elite, seeing that they had lost control on the people because of the introduction of print, then used it as its new weapon.
In 1776, the American colonies declare their independence. Then, George Washington, that dashing general destined to adorn the $1 bill, stuns the world by defeating the mighty British Army. He mothballs his uniform and throws his hat in the political ring. And before you can say, I cannot tell a lie, Washington is elected the first president of the United States. I mean, everyone knows that, right? The problem with that version is that it skips over more than a decade of American history.
We have this myth that in 1776 we declare independence, and then very quickly we create a government, the government that we've had ever since. But if you think about it for more than 2 minutes, you realize the Declaration is 1776 and the Constitution is written in 1787. That's 11 years. So what happens in those 11 years?
Good question. In those lost years, the forgotten fact is that America is ruled by governments that come before our cherished Constitution. And it's those governments that our other first presidents lead. Our first president is John Hancock, the same Boston patriot worn by Paul Revere on his midnight ride. In 1776, he's president of the Continental Congress, the American colony's fledgling national government. And when he and the other delegates put their John Hancocks on the Declaration of Independence, he's instantly promoted to the president of the newly declared United States, making him the first president.
But wait a minute. Is that even true? Actually no. There were 14 presidents before Washington. First and third president was Peyton Randolph, was appointed to the First Continental Congress at Philadelphia County and served as its president in September of 1774 and then afterwards in May of 1775 as he served again as the third president, which is the first president of the Second Continental Congress. Second president was Arthur Henry Middleton, October in 1774. Fourth president was John Hancock on May 24, 1775 and not 1776. Fifth president was Henry Lawrence starting in November of 1777 to December of 1778. Sixth president was John Jay, elected to the Second Continental Congress, and served as president of the Congress in 1778. Seventh president was Samuel Huntington 1779 to 1781, President of the United States in Congress assembled in 1781. Eighth president was Thomas McKean, President of the Continental Congress from July 17, 81 to November 17, 81. Eighth president and the first black president, John Hanson was elected as first president of the Confederation Congress in November 1781. I am stopping there with listing the rest, anyone can research and find them.
Contrary to popular belief, the internet is not as free and open as one might think. All of our activity on the internet passes through the hands of private corporations, and they decide what you can say or see on the internet. In China, for example, the government actively instructs internet service providers and their content hosts to police their services. They even go as far as handing out internet self-discipline awards to companies that contribute the most to a harmonious and healthy internet development.
What you need to do is control the perceptions of the population, because perception is everything.
You're in China and you want to circumvent the internet firewall. As you browse the web from site to site, you constantly encounter websites the government doesn't want you to see. YouTube, blocked. Twitter, blocked. Google, blocked. Wikipedia, blocked. Facebook, blocked. The government doesn't want its citizens using these sites. If they did, democracy would be just around the corner. How do you control the internet without giving the impression to the average citizen that you're doing so? When the internet came to China in 1994, the Central Party immediately issued regulations on the new technology. Such regulation included the ominous and expansive detail that the internet couldn't be used to harm the security and interests of the state. The original operation for controlling the internet was through the Ministry of Public Security and was called the Golden Shield Project, but it's better known today as the Great Firewall of China. The party controls the Chinese internet through site blocking, topic filtering, rearranging search results, mass surveillance of web traffic, and self-censorship imposed on private companies. First and foremost, the Chinese government simply blocks websites. So the party filters words and topics of conversation. For the average Chinese citizen scrolling through their feed on Weibo, equivalent to Twitter, posts they make or comments they leave may be automatically filtered for review. After constitutional changes allowing Xi Jinping to stay in office without term limits, words and phrases like emperor, control, 1984, animal farm, and brave new world were banned. The actual legwork for reviewing these filtered posts is done by millions of online censors, at least 2 million according to official sources. Some of these are government workers, but a lot of the work is also done by private firms, which are obliged to hire censors as part of establishing themselves in the Chinese market. Another aspect of internet control in China is mass surveillance. A lot of this surveillance is aimed at influencers and thought leaders like journalists and writers, but by law, the browsing activity of all internet users is gathered by internet service providers and passed along to the government. In her book Censored, Distraction and Diversion Inside China's Great Firewall, Margaret E. Roberts describes 3 methods the party uses to control the internet. The first is fear. This is when the government uses punishments or threats of punishment to stop certain stories or comments from being posted. These more commonly used are 2 other tactics, what Roberts calls flooding and friction. Flooding refers to efforts of the government to drown out critical thought in a sea of pro-government messages, or sometimes just general confusion. News embarrassing to the regime is subject to a deluge of confusing and contradictory pro-government articles and comments. The hope is that the average citizen won't take the time to figure it all out. It's a group of students paid per post they make on behalf of the government. The goal of these flooding efforts is not to convince everyone, but rather to frustrate people, make them give up trying to find the right answer in an ocean of contradiction. And this dynamic is also critical for the third and most unsettling tactic, friction. Roberts defines friction as increasing the cost, either in time or money, of access or spread of information. In other words, rather than simply banning a website with unflattering information about the Communist Party, just make it a little slower to load. The government doesn't just hope, it knows a significant portion of people with busy lives and limited time will just give up, or even more likely, fail to notice the manipulation at all. They'll weave reality for over 1 billion people.
我们相当于那个环卫工人，只是我们净化的不是马路，不是小区，我们净化的是网络空间。
The enemy of the state is information. After all of our opinions, decisions, and sentiments are based on the information we have available to us. Therefore, it only makes sense that if you control the flow of information, you control the population. That's why controlling the narrative is so important to China.
But it is my experience that when the people ask questions that are not in their own best interest, they should simply be told to keep their minds on their labor and leave matters of the state to the state.
And since we live in the age of information, the best medium to control the narrative is, of course, the internet. Controlling the internet is so important to China that not only do they have an entire division of the government dedicated to it, but they have an entire industry of auditors, as they like to call it, that's absolutely booming. Combine that with the infamous Great Firewall of China that blocks all major Western social media and search platforms like all Google apps, all Facebook apps, YouTube, WordPress, Blogger, Bing, and much more, and replaces them with government-controlled alternatives, China is the king of censorship.
The Media Research Center released a devastating report today documenting the censorship of conservative speech by Silicon Valley's tolerant tech giants. Among the findings, claims from former employees that Facebook hides conservative content from the trending section were backed up by a detailed study. Google, YouTube, and Twitter partner with leftist groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center that hate conservatives. And check this out. Of the 25 members on the panel that guides Twitter's policies, 12 are liberals, and there's only one conservative. I can't believe there's one. Shocking, well, but not surprising, is it? Where have you been? Tell us what you found.
Well, it's a massive study done by my colleagues Dan Gaynor and Ashley Goldenberg. It's 50 pages documenting what conservatives have been suggesting has been happening. It sounds hyperbolic, but Lord, this is true. This is the emerging, the greatest censorship of free speech worldwide in the history of man. And let me explain this. The left is on a jihad against conservative thought. It's happening in academia, in entertainment, in business, religion, everywhere. Everywhere where they're attacking, they're suppressing conservative thought. Now they're going to the social media giants. These social media giants have audiences in the billions. And what we've shown in this massive report is whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Google or YouTube, they're all employing different tactics to go against conservatives.
Let's go through some of them. Google search aids Democrats and study found that 2016 campaign searches were biased in favor of Hillary Clinton. YouTube shutting down conservative channels by mistake by removing videos that promote right-wing political views. And tech companies Facebook and Google are relying on anti-conservative fact-checkers like Snopes and Wikipedia.
YouTube has been partnering with them to unmask conservatives and to go against conservative content and to uncover these awful conservatives and what they're doing.
We're talking about, in effect, a global effort to suppress or silence conservatives.
You know, Jack Dorsey is the CEO of Twitter. He put these things in its right perspective. Just recently, he promoted an article that called for the destruction of the conservative movement. Promoted it.
Yeah, he retweeted it.
So it's not just happening in the United States. It's all over the world that the left is militant.
The President will speak to members of the American Society of Newspaper Editors who are holding their 39th annual convention at the Statler Hilton Hotel.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. Mr. Catledge, members of the American Society,
newspaper editors, ladies and gentlemen. The president of a great democracy, such as ours, and the editors of great newspapers, such as yours, owe a common obligation to the people. An obligation to present the facts, to present them with candor, and to present them in perspective.
I thought that it was a matter of real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here, because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now we're looking at that very carefully.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole news and public affairs operation in 1954, the ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them.
We have quite a lot of detailed information, and we will evaluate it, and we will include any evidence of wrongdoing or any evidence of impropriety in our final report and make recommendations.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
It was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
What happens when media becomes a tool? A tool used to manipulate, a tool used to plant thoughts into our heads. In 1949, a CIA director by the name of Frank Wisner was given a task. He was given a task to start an organization responsible for the manipulation of media and direct action in America and countries around the world. This operation would be known as Mockingbird. The justification for all of this was to fight against the spread of communism, but surely there was a better way to do this. The CIA would go on to hire many top journalists working for big American publications to further their cause. But they did not stop there. They would also go on to bankroll students and foreign publications as well. Anything to stop the threat that is communism. They would even go as far as funding a Hollywood film. Like it or not, Mockingbird was effective. The CIA was able to implement a mass media manipulation system, allowing them to control a good portion of public perception. They had the ability to release media that fit their narrative while censoring those they did not like, as long as it was under a company under their control. Companies such as CBS, Time magazines, New York Times, New York Herald Tribune, New York Post, The Washington Post, Louisville Courier Journal, and Copley News Services. In 1975, an American senator by the name Frank Church set up a committee. This committee would call in CIA Director William Colby for a hearing. The Church Committee would go on to release various reports exposing the CIA, leading to public outrage.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.